Well, hello. I'll go ahead and get started. It's 5:02, so thank you for joining us. My name is Martha McFarlane Fays. I'm the Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer, and you're here for a webinar on the State Historic Preservation Tax Credit as it applies to residential properties. We are going to be joined today by Nathan Niedering, who is helping to manage the questions, and our presentation will be by Brian Lejiski, our architect specialist for the State Historic Preservation Office. The format of this program will be a 45-minute presentation followed by questioning, and I would like to direct your attention to the bottom of the screen. And if you would look, please, at the Q&A box to the left of the chat box, please ask any questions in the Q&A box. We will be saving those till after the presentation and responding to each of those questions accordingly. But it's important that you do this because we are tracking the questions that we receive, and we'll be updating our frequently asked questions accordingly. So if they go into chat, things can tend to get lost. So please use the Q&A function. And I'll probably have to remind people when we start the Q&A portion of our session. We do have this set for 1 hour, but we are able to go a little bit over that if we haven't answered all of your questions and you have additional information or questions that you'd like to ask. Unfortunately, during the meeting, you're not going to be able to raise your hand and ask a question in that manner. So again, just reiterating to please go ahead and use the Q&A button. So with that, I am going to lead this into Brian Lejiski, who will be speaking to us about the historic preservation tax credits. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Martha, and welcome everyone. This is our second webinar today. This one will be focused on the owner-occupied state tax credit. So the legislation for our new tax credit program was passed in December of 2020, and that is known as PA 343. We did have to establish the administrative rules for the program. And so that was one of the reasons for the delay between the passage of the legislation at the end of 2020 and now. It was quite a lengthy process to get that administrative rules in place. So here we are today, and our online web portal for application will open this Wednesday, June 15th at 9 a.m. So that's the goal for getting the portal open for you to apply for the tax credit. And the intent of this presentation is to guide you through the application process so you become familiar with it and can see what we will be asking for, and that application opens on Wednesday. The rehabilitation tax credits are a 25% credit, and that credit is based on the qualified rehabilitation expenditures for your project. So you'll hear me refer to QREs throughout the presentation, and those are your qualified rehabilitation expenditures. This is basically your rehabilitation project costs. And again, what you would be eligible for is 25% of those costs for the credit. We do have the law, the rules, and a lot of additional information on our website. So please visit that website at michigan.gov/HP credit. Hopefully many of you have been there and have seen the information there, and we will be continuing to update that as we have information. And as we mentioned, we'll be updating our FAQ document as well and posting that to reflect questions that were answered in the webinars today. So with our new program, there's a total of 5 million in credits available annually. That is broken down into 3 categories. There are 2 commercial categories for 2 million each. But what we're focusing on this evening is the 1 million credits available for owner-occupied residential properties. So 1 million available through the program for owner-occupied residential. A few key points about the program. It may be used more than once at the same property, but you cannot have more than 1 open application at a time. So over a number of years, you may submit multiple applications, but only 1 application can be open at one time. It may also be used by the same owner more than once. So if one owner has multiple owner-occupied properties, there is the ability to use it for multiple properties, even if it's the same owner. So no more than one application open at the same time, but one owner could apply for multiple properties. It does have to be a certified rehabilitation, and it does have to be substantial. So your QREs have to exceed $1,000 for your project on your property. So as we know, as homeowners, we know that it's very easy to spend $1,000. So meeting that minimum expenditure requirement is not difficult at all. So that shouldn't be a barrier for anyone to apply as the minimum expenditure requirement. The project does also have to meet the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. So we will be reviewing the Part 2 application and the Part 3 application to ensure that those standards are being met as you execute your project, and we will help to guide that project so that those standards are being met. So two qualifications for being a certified rehabilitation: it has to be substantial, spending over $1,000, and it has to comply with the standards. It also has to be a certified historic structure. So you can qualify by being by owning a building that is one of these three. It can be individually listed in the National or State Register. It can be located in a district that's listed in the National or State Register. If it is in a district, it does have to be defined as contributing to the character of the district. So it must be contributing resource in the district. It could also be, the third option is to be in a locally designated historic district. And again, it has to be considered contributing to the character of the district. So 3 ways to qualify as a historic resource: individually on the National or State Register, contributing to a National or State Register listed district, or contributing to a locally designated district. You qualify by the use of the structure after rehabilitation. So if this is a residential structure that may be being converted to commercial, the end use of that is commercial. So again, with this residential credit, we're looking at properties that are going to be owner-occupied residential after the rehabilitation. It cannot be commercial or income producing after the rehabilitation. Your qualified capital costs include things such as mechanical upgrades, plumbing, electrical, roof work, painting, kitchens and bathrooms. All those types of typical projects that you might do on your home would be eligible. If you do have a more involved project or a complex project and you have other people involved, such as architects and engineers, those fees could be included. Typically for owner-occupied residential, we wouldn't have developer fees, but if you do have permit or review fees, those could be included as well. So qualified capital costs plus some of your soft costs can all be included as eligible expenditures. Some costs do not qualify. So any cost related to the acquisition of the property, those are not eligible. Any cost associated with furnishings, window coverings, building additions, or appliances are not eligible. Our application is modeled after the federal tax credit application, which is a 3-part application. Right now on our online web portal, we have Part 1 and Part 2 available for you to use to apply for. A note about applying for Part 1 or Part 1 and Part 2 together. If you submit a Part 1 only, that does not put you in line for a pre-approval or a priority number for your application. We will review the Part 1 to determine your eligibility. In order to get in line and potentially get a pre-approval letter or a priority number for your project, you'll have to submit the Part 1 and 2 together. We will only issue those pre-approval letters and provide priority numbers based on the Part 2 application. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about how to apply for the credit. The applications will be reviewed in the order that they are received. We do have a 120-day review period, so we will simply review those as they come in, and they will be time and date stamped, so we will know the order that they are received. The credits will be awarded on a first come, first served basis, and that will be determined by the date and time that the complete Part 1 and 2 applications are received. So again, we will date and timestamp those based on when you hit the submit button for your application. That will be the first come, first served basis. So first in the door is potentially first awarded the credits. A couple of application timelines. So your work must begin within 1 year of receiving a Part 2 approval. So if you receive a pre-approval letter with a credit amount, your work has to begin within 1 year of receiving that approval. Your work must be completed and a Part 3 submitted within 8 years of the Part 2 approval. So you essentially have an 8-year window in which to complete the project and submit your Part 3 application for approval to get the credit and claim the credit at the end of your project. You do also have the ability to apply for work that was completed within the past year. So if you are applying for completed work, you can only go back 1 year from the date of your Part 2 submittal. So if we're looking at this Wednesday, June 15th, as the when your application is, when you can submit your application, you cannot submit anything for expenses from before June 15th of 2021. So 1 year back from the date of your submittal is when you can include expenditures, nothing older than that. If you are submitting for completed work within the past year, you must complete your work and submit the Part 3 within 7 years of your Part 2 approval. So again, you have that 8-year window to complete the project, whether you're submitting now for future work or including work from the previous year, it's an 8-year window. There's also a recapture clause in the legislation, and that recapture clause is effective for 5 years after your Part 3 approval. And what that recapture clause states is that if you sell the property or make changes that do not comply with the standards, then Treasury can recapture a portion of the credit during that 5-year window. So just kind of an overview of the application process. We are going to go through the application in detail. So this is just kind of our overview so you can get a sense of how this is going to work. So we do have an online web portal application that will open at 9 o'clock on Wednesday. Once you complete the information and hit the submit button, you will receive an automated email confirmation that your application was submitted and received. Once we have a chance to start processing those applications, we will send an individualized email to the contact information you provide to request additional materials from you for your Part 1 and Part 2 applications. So 2 emails. One is automated saying we received your application. The second is customized to tell you how you would submit additional application materials. Those additional application materials will be uploaded to a box folder. We will provide instructions. We will create the box folder for you and then provide instructions on uploading the documents to that box folder. So that's going to be our document transfer method, is using the box folder. So you will upload the materials and then we'll be able to download them for your application. We do require application fees with all 3 parts of the application, and those will have to be submitted via an online money transfer. And I will give you the details of that transfer process when we get into the details of the application, but we will not be accepting checks or any other form of payment other than an online money transfer. So for those projects that are, those applications that are complete and that we are going to award a credit to, we will issue a pre-approval letter, which will include the credit amount, and that will be based on the QREs that you provide in your application. Once we award the maximum credit amount of $1 million, for other applications that have come in, we will assign priority numbers to those. And those will be open for a 2-year window based on the original application submittal date. As I mentioned earlier, there's a total of $5 million allocation for credits per year. So that's annually, $1 million for residential. So in 2023, we will receive another allocation. Those projects that have priority numbers will be first in line for that new allocation as well. So your application will stay open with that priority number for 2 years. So 2 years from June 15th of 2022 your application will be open until June 15th, 2024, at which point it will close. If you are not awarded credit by that time, your application is closed, and if you wish to, you can apply again, but you'll have to go through the entire process again, including submittal of fees. If you are approved for credit and you do finish the project and submit a Part 3, you will claim the credit as a lump sum. The credit is assignable, but it is not refundable. So you can assign it to other entities other than yourself, but there is no portion of the credit that is refundable to you. If the credit does exceed your tax liability for a given year, it can roll over and carry forward for up to 10 years. So you have up to 10 years to use the credit based on your individual tax liability. So now we'll jump into the actual online web portal application. And these are screenshots from that application. So you can see exactly what the fields are and what the information is that we are asking you to supply in your application. First of all, you will supply the historic property name if you know it. This historic name should be one that you know from, say, for example, from a National Register nomination or local historic district study committee report. It's not something that you make up or you think it should be. It has to be some sort of documented historic name if it's known. If it's not known, then simply complete the address of the property, city, village, or township, the county where it's located, and the zip code. So that's basic information about the resource itself. We also ask for a description of the property's physical appearance. So this is a brief architectural description. This is where you are telling us in words what your property is. So you would describe it, the basic floor plan, materials, construction, condition, those types of descriptions. We will use that and supplement that with the photographs that you will submit to give us a more complete picture of what the resource is. Include a date of construction, the source of property information. Again, where are you getting the information that you have? Again, it could be a National Register nomination or a study committee report. If the property has had additions or alterations over time and you know the dates of those, please include that here. Tell us the original and subsequent uses of the property. So if it was, if it has always been owner occupied, or if it was some other use at some point, but is now an owner occupied property. Here you'll provide us with a statement of historical significance. And again, relying on the documentation you might have, cut and paste is the easy way to do this with the pertinent information. If you don't have that information available for cut and paste, then you'll have to write your statement of historic significance, telling us why this is a significant historic resource, how it contributes to the district if it's eligible as being in a district, and that relevant historic information. This is where you are telling us how you are eligible to apply for the credit. So this is the certification of the resource. Again, is it listed individually or contributing to a district or to the National Register of Historic Places? Is it individually designated or does it contribute to a state register historic district? Or is it eligible because it contributes to a local historic district? So select one of those three so we know how you're applying. And then include the name of the historic district or listed property if it's individual, and then the name of the local unit of government where the resource is located. If you are eligible by being a contributing resource in a local historic district, you will have to submit the declaration of location form, which you can see here. The declaration of location form is available to download now from our website. So if you are applying on Wednesday and need the declaration of location form completed, you'll want to download that so you can have that completed. Sections 1, 2, and 3 of the form will be completed by you as the applicant. Section 4 is the declaration, which must be completed by an official representative of the local unit of government. So this is the item number 4 is what you have to have completed by someone in your local unit of government. So they will provide the name of the historic district, the year it was established, their name and title, address of the local unit of government, and then the signature of the official representative, and then the date. So again, download the form, have it completed, have it signed, and then you will be able to upload this when you complete your online web portal application. Next section is applicant information. So this is information you will provide as the owner. Provide us first and last name. If it's a co-owner or married owners, you can provide the second owner's first and last names. Organization name will typically be more applicable to a commercial entity that has a business or partnership ownership. Probably won't apply to most residential property applicants. Provide us your mailing address, city, state, and zip code. Provide your phone number here, your email address here, and then Social Security or taxpayer ID number here. And then again, for second or multiple owners, you have a second field to provide Social Security numbers or taxpayer ID numbers. You are only able to provide one email address here. If you would like us to have more than one email address as a contact, you can upload that information with your application materials when you upload to your box folder. But right now you can only submit one email address here, and that will be our primary contact. If you have a project contact that is different than the applicant, if you are working with a consultant, for example, or someone is assisting you with the application, you might want to have them as a contact to receive information about your application. You can complete these fields, including their first and last name. Again, if there's an organization, their name, the organization name, the street address, city, state, zip code, phone number, and again, email address. The email addresses are going to be critical because that is how we are going to communicate with you about your application. So one email address, if you have a contact, can go here, and then the email address for the applicant will go under that section. Once you've completed that information, you, by completing this field, typing your name in here, you are certifying and acknowledging that you are a qualified taxpayer and that all the information you are providing on this application is correct to the best of your knowledge. So you will sign here. Again, if there's additional owners, there is a field for them to sign, type as their signature here. Once you have all that information completed and the declaration of location form uploaded, if that's applicable, you will hit the submit button here. Once you hit that submit button, you will receive an automated email to let you know that your application was submitted and received. That will then be followed up by an individualized email from us to you, to the email address that you provide as contact information. Once you receive that email from us, we will provide instructions on how to access your box folder and how to make payment for your application. Once you receive that email, you will have 48 hours from the date and time of our email to upload all of that information to the box folder and to make the payment. So again, 48 hours. If you go beyond that 48 hours, we will issue a new date and time stamp based on when we receive the complete application. So your time and date stamp will move if you do not submit all that information within the 48 hours after receiving our second email about how to submit application materials. The fee that you'll pay for the Part 1 application is $50, so it's a flat fee. All Part 1 fees are $50. And this is how you'll be submitting the fee, through an online electronic money transfer. So you will have to log into your financial institution, your online account, access online bill pay, and you'll want to add a company to your account. You will be transferring money from your account to the MEDC account, and the account information that you need to transfer to is located here. So this is the information that we'll provide in our second email to you with instructions on how to submit that payment. So again, we'll not be receiving payments in any other form other than that online institution to institution money transfer. Once you have instructions on uploading documents to the box folder. This is what we will be asking for. A location map identifying both the property and the historic district boundaries so we can see which district you're in as well as where you're located within that district. We need photographs, both interior and exterior of the resource, and those need to be keyed to a map or a plan of the property so that we can orient ourselves to the resource to see, you know, what we're looking at, especially on the interior where we might not know what room the photo was taken in or from what angle. So it can be the map or the plan can be a fairly simple sketch plan. It doesn't have to be highly detailed. It just should be, for a residential property, at least a basic floor plan on the property so that we can see both where you're taking exterior photos and interior photos. If you have supporting documentation for your Part 1 application, you can also upload that here. For example, if the home is described in the National Register nomination or in the Local Historic District Study Committee report, you can copy and upload that information here as well. The Part 2 then is where you will describe the proposed work to us that you are intending to do. So again, we're going to see information repeated on this application. If you've submitted a Part 1 separately from your Part 2, you will have received a project number from us. If you have done that, you will provide the project number for the Part 2. If you're submitting Part 1 and Part 2 together, you will not have a project number from us, so leave this field blank. Again, provide us with the historic name if it's known, the street address, city, village, or township, county, and zip code. On the Part 2 application, this is where we're asking for the data on the rehabilitation project. So again, we're confirming the proposed use after rehabilitation is owner-occupied residential, so fill in this field. The estimated start date of your project, the estimated completion date, and your estimated qualified expenditures. Your QREs are here. This is an important number because this, if you are awarded a credit, this is the number that your credit amount will be based on. And then check one of these three to tell us which credit you're seeking. For owner-occupied residential resources, you will check this first one as an owner-occupied residential credit. Again, if you're submitting the Part 1 and Part 2 separately, you'll complete this information. If you're submitting together, select this button that you're submitting with this application. If you've got a pre-approved Part 1, supply the date of approval here in this field. If you are applying for work that was completed over the past year, tell us the start date of the project, the end date, and then here you're certifying that the previous work claimed in this application was completed no more than 1 year prior to this submission date. So again, if we're assuming you're submitting on June 15th, no more than 1 year prior to that. Again, with the Part 2, you're going to supply the applicant information, your first and last name, if there's co-owners, first and last name, mailing address, city, state, zip code, phone number, email address. Again, critical that we have the correct, most applicable email address here in which to correspond with. Security, social security numbers or taxpayer ID number here, and for multiple owners, a second field here for additional numbers. Project contact, again, if you're working with a consultant or someone you wish to guide your application and be the primary contact, complete this information. Again, with the email address, correct email address here, then we will have 2 email addresses to correspond with for your application. Once you reach the end of the Part 2 application, again, you will attest that you are a qualified taxpayer and that the information you've provided in this application is correct to the best of your knowledge. By typing your name here, we will consider that your signature, and a secondary field here for additional owner to sign. Once you hit the submit button, similar to the Part 1 application, you'll receive an automated email telling you that your application has been submitted, and that will be followed up with a personalized email from us to you, to the email address you've provided or addresses. instructing you to submit your additional information and that you have 48 hours to upload that information on your box, into your box folder, and submit the fee. What you will upload into the box folder includes a work description. So what we would like to see is for you to describe the existing conditions, what we're looking at, what the feature is, what are the existing conditions, and then describe the proposed work. This is what you are wanting to do with this feature or with this portion of the resource. If you have a more involved project or a little bit more complex, you might have architectural plans or specifications involved. Those should be included as an upload. We do have to have photographs of all work areas, whether it's interior or exterior, and these need to be before work photographs. And again, these need to be keyed to a plan so that we can orient ourselves to the project and see where we're looking, especially if we're reviewing the interior photos. If you do have product information for some of the work items that you're completing, it's very useful for us to see those, so you can upload those as well. So an easy example for a residential project would be if you're installing a new asphalt shingle roof. You have an existing 25-year-old asphalt shingle roof that needs to be replaced. You're proposing a new asphalt shingle roof. You can describe that to us, but it's also really helpful if you just have the manufacturer information, whether it's PDF from their website or product information that you received from them. That's an example of the type of product information that we would find useful to add to your application. So it will answer any questions that we might have about exactly what you're proposing to do. So the second fee comes with your Part 2 application submittal. For owner-occupied residential resources, the Part 2 application fees are, if your QREs are less than or equal to $20,000, your fee will be a flat $100. If your QREs are greater than $20,000, your fee will be 2% of the credit amount. So we will let you know what the credit amount would be for your project, and you will pay 2% of the credit amount as your Part 2 application fee. And again, that will have to be an online transfer of the money from financial institution to financial institution. Because you have that 8-year window in which to complete your projects, we know working on homes and historic homes that things change over time. Prices change, projects change, things come up that you did not expect. So we know that your project may likely change over that 8-year window. So the amendment sheet is where you will keep us informed of changes to the project and update us on how you are managing those changes and what you would like to notify us of as changes. So that amendment sheet can be submitted. Again, once you have the Part 2 application submitted to us, we will provide a project number, include that project number here so that we can reference that. And our project numbers will be auto-generated from our database, but they will be in the format of STX and then the year. So STX22 hyphen and then your project number issued sequentially based on when you submitted your application. So STX22-1 will be the first tax credit project number. Again, the historic name, if it's known, street address, city, village, or township, county, and zip code on the amendment form. Again, applicant information we're asking for on that amendment form so we can verify and coordinate all the information for the application. Phone number, email address, critical here, and then social security number or taxpayer ID numbers here. Again, if you have a project contact, complete their information here. Make sure the email address is correct. And then give us a brief description of the proposed changes here in this box. So it could be, with that roof example, you have 2 areas of flat roofs over 2 porches, and you did not include those in your original application, but you realize as the project has progressed, you will need to replace those as well. So you can describe that roof replacement addition in this box here. Again, we ask you to certify that you are the qualified taxpayer and the information you're submitting is correct to the best of your knowledge. By typing your name, by checking this box and typing your name here, we consider that your signature. And again, for secondary or multiple owners, another signatory can go here. Once you've completed all that information, hit the submit button. And again, similar to the part 1 and part 2, you'll receive an auto-generated email, and then that'll be followed up by individualized email instructing you to upload your information to your box folder. There are no fees associated with submitting an amendment form, so you don't have to worry about fee submittal with the amendment. Once you have an approved part 2 with a pre-approval letter, you go and do the project, and before that 8 years is up, you'll submit your part 3 application telling us you've completed the project. Again, with your part 3, we'll ask for that project number, so it's easy reference for us. Historic name if known, street address, city, village, or township, county, and zip code. With the part 3, we will ask for additional project information. That information will include your total project costs, both QREs and non-QREs. So this is your total project here. The second line, the second field, is where you will insert your QREs. This is qualified rehabilitation expenditures solely due to the rehabilitation of the resource. Here you will add the part 2, the date of the part 2 approval. That's the date that we will have approved the part 2. The date the rehabilitation work on the resource began, the date that it was completed. And then you do have the ability to assign the credits, as I mentioned earlier. So if you are assigning the credit, check the box here. If not, check the circle here. And if you are assigning the credit, you can download the assignment form from our website, and that will be uploaded to your box folder with your part 3 uploads. This is what the assignment form will look like. This is the information you will provide here as the applicant and the receiver of the credit. And then here is where you can provide information on the entities you want to assign the credit to. And you can do that disproportionately. You can assign a portion of the credit to multiple entities based on your desires or however you want to assign that credit. So that is the assignment form. Again, will be available for download, and then you will upload that with your part 3 application materials. Again, with the part 3, we're getting repetitive here now with the applicant information, but again, we do need that with each part of the application, so we are ensuring we have all the accurate information for each part of the application. Again, critical email address, and then Social Security or taxpayer ID numbers, so that Treasury knows the information for you to claim the credit. Again, if you have a consultant or other entity that you are working with and you wish to have them as a project contact, complete the information here, as well as their correct email address so they can be copied on correspondence. And with the part 3 application, you do have to also submit some economic data. The economic data that we're requesting is necessary because we have to submit a legislative report at the end of every calendar year, updating the legislature on the activities of the program. So we are looking at this economic data to tell us how the program is doing and the impact that it is having on our community, historic districts throughout the state. So the information that you will have to submit with your economic data includes the property value before rehabilitation, the property value after rehabilitation, the labor hours generated by the contractor working on your project, and then state and local sales tax generated by the project, and then state and local income taxes generated by your project. We are asking for some additional information here, but these fields are going to apply to commercial projects. And so for these fields specifically, you can simply enter 0 into those fields for a part 3 owner occupied application. And now we're down to the bottom of the part 3 application, again, where you are certifying that you are a qualified taxpayer and that the information you're submitting is correct to the best of your knowledge. Typing your name here as your signature, and then additional owner signature line in this field here. Again, once you hit the submit button, you'll receive a automated email response from us, which will be followed by an individualized email telling you that you can upload your information to your box folder and submit your Part 3 fee. The documentation you will upload to your box folder includes photographs of all the work areas, interior and exterior. Again, these need to be keyed to a plan. We do reserve the right to do a site inspection. Probably will not be visiting all the properties that we award a credit to, but we may do some site inspections. And then if you are using the assignment form, you will upload that with the Part 3, as I mentioned. So photographs are the key requirement here, so that we can compare the photographs from the Part 2 with the photographs you submit with Part 3 to confirm that all work was completed in compliance with the standards as you stated and as it was approved in your Part 2 application. Then the final fee comes with your Part 3 submittal. The Part 3 fees for owner-occupied residential properties are, if your QREs are less than or equal to $20,000, your fee will be $100. And if your QREs are greater than $20,000, your fee will be 2% of the credit amount. So your QRE, 25% of that, 2% of the credit amount for your final review fee. And again, that has to be paid through an online money transfer that we will instruct you how to do again with the Part 3 application submittal. And I believe that covers the application process. This is our contact information. And again, I'll refer you to our michigan.gov/HP credit website. This is where we have all of our information on the tax credit program and where we will be providing updates from now through the opening of the application portal on Wednesday. Again, that's where you can download today the declaration of location form and the SEV form. And if you have any questions, please follow up with us. Thank you for attending and your attention. So this concludes the formal webinar presentation portion of our afternoon. So I will turn it back over to Martha and we can jump into the Q&A portion. Martha.
Great, thanks. And as we are going through the questions here, I want to just remind everybody to please use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to ask any additional questions you might have. Please don't use the chat for questions. And we are tracking these, and they're going to go into any new information will go into our frequently asked questions and update those. So it is important that we track these questions. So I'm going to just reiterate some of the things that Nathan already answered in the chat, just so everybody's aware. But one person asked, within the last month, we replaced bathroom fixtures in both bathrooms in our historic home as they were 40 years old and leaking. Can we submit these expenditures even though they predate the application? So just a reminder, the work is in compliance with the standards. Work up to 1 year before approval of or submission of the Part 2 application may be included for tax credit consideration. The online version of the application is going to be available at 9 a.m. on June 15th, as we've mentioned. But what we have up there right now is just a sample. So you can look at it and prepare your responses. And it's the same information that Brian just went through in this session. So it will go live and you can fill it out at 9 a.m. on Wednesday. Does the $1 million limit for residential awards renew each year? Yes, for 2023, we'll have another $1 million cap on the tax credit. Is there a space limit on the descriptive text? There's no limit within the fields, but we urge concise descriptive responses. Somebody else said they had trouble with the meeting info, so we apologize for that. But we are glad that you were able to join us and you got the Zoom meeting info. And these webinars are recorded, So you can always go back and reference them before we go live on the 15th. They'll be posted tomorrow on our website. Would it be relevant to add the contractor contact for additional contact information? Also, do we need to include attic basement photos? Would a certificate of appropriateness for said work be useful to include in supplemental documentation? So a lot of questions there. Yes, please add the contractor and they'll be copied on correspondence regarding your credit. Attic and basement photos.
Martha, sorry, I have to.
Oh, yeah.
We don't want to be corresponding directly with your contractors. Everything has to go through you. You can submit their information, but everything will be corresponded with you. And then if you want to correspond with your contractor, that's fine.
I'm not sure if we're thinking of consultant or contractor here, but we should correct that, Nathan. So attic and basement, yes, if you're working in attic and basement work, yeah, you do want to provide photos of those spaces. If you're doing work in those areas, otherwise we don't need to see it. And yes, certificates of appropriateness would be relevant to see if you're in a local district. Somebody's asking about what is a historic name for a house. So that is something that is guided by research. So if it's listed under the National Register of Historic Places, for example, under a certain name, that is the name that you should use. If it's listed under a certain name in the local historic district information, like in their study committee report, that is the name you should use. But you do not want to make a name up, for example. So if you don't have a historic property name, then just leave that blank. Somebody is asking about the fees for part 1. Yes, it's a flat $50. And asking for the web link to the portal where you'll be submitting the application. So that is also in the Q&A answers. And it will take the place of the sample documents on the website. So if you've already gone to our website and you've seen the sample documents, that same link is going to take you to the live application. So those are the questions Nathan has answered in the Q&A. And I am going to just start into our unanswered questions. So first question, what if the project costs are likely to be more than $20,000, but you don't know the exact cost yet? So Brian, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, so I mean, we understand, and like I described, because you have an 8-year window in which to complete work, you know, things change during that period. So if you think they're likely to be more than 20,000, but you don't know the exact costs yet, you're just going to have to make your best estimate on what you think those costs are going to be. As you do that, though, remember that if we issue a pre-approval letter for a credit amount for your project, it's going to be based on the number you give us in the Part 2 application, and that is going to be your predetermined credit amount. So that's not going to change even with your Part 3 submittal. So if your Part 2 credit amount is X dollars and your Part 3 final project cost is you know, substantially higher, we're not going to increase the credit amount because your final costs were higher. So you're just going to have to make your best guess, and then as we know, working with historic homes, you're probably not going to spend less than you anticipate, probably more, but your credit amount is based on that Part 2 estimate.
Okay, thank you. For mortgage purposes, banks consider an owner-occupied 4-unit building as a residential mortgage. I live in my 3-unit historic building. Can I do a residential application, or do I have to do a commercial application?
This is a question, we've received a couple similar questions like this, and I don't know if I know the answer to this. I don't know, Mark or Martha, do you have anything to add or any guidance on this? I don't know how we're going to handle these types of resources.
Yes, the particular unit you live in is owner-occupied residential. So you have to put an application for that unit separately from the other units you're renting out. So you put in one application for the owner occupied unit, and another application for the rest of the building.
Thank you. So just hope everybody understands that. So the end use is what's important for that. So if you are in an owner occupied unit where you live, that unit is residential credit, but the other units that you're renting out would be a commercial credit, even in the same building. All right, another interesting question. Some of our funds are from an insurance claim. Does that affect our eligibility for the credit?
That does not affect your eligibility for the credit. No, you simply would not include any outside funding you're receiving for an insurance claim. So essentially, that should be deducted from your QREs. So you're not getting a credit on money from an insurance claim.
Thank you. Mark Hill asks, is there a way to prepay fees?
Not sure exactly what you're asking, but essentially you are prepaying your fees because we're not reviewing any portions of the applications until you pay your fees. So you can't pay them before you receive your individualized email from us directing you to pay. But you are paying before we are reviewing the application. So you can't pay when you submit the online web through the web portal. You cannot pay your fees then. You have to wait until we tell you that you can pay your fees.
So the next question I think has been answered. It concerns inflationary impacts to your QREs. And, certainly we're facing that right now, a lot of inflationary headwind. So that would be addressed through the amendment, correct, Brian?
Well, only if the scope of work is changing. If your scope of work doesn't change, you don't have to submit an amendment form just because the cost is increasing.
Okay.
Yeah, it's only if the scope of work is changing, and that could be because of increased costs, like you have to reduce the scope of work, then you should submit an amendment. But if you're still doing all the work you said in the part 2, it's just going to cost you more. You don't have to submit an amendment for that.
Well, here's the thing, is that we don't have the tax credits to give you necessarily for any change in the price, because we have $5 million to give out, $1 million for the residential. That doesn't change because somebody's expensive was more than they expected. That's what we had to give out. So the only way we can help you out is to go take tax credits away from somebody, and we're not going to do that. So, when you submit your cost estimate, that is your cost estimate.
Right. So we hope that's understood. So even if you are putting a QRE in for 2022 and you're not finished for 8 years, and inflation may impact your project, but those additional expenses you would not be able to get the credit for those, most likely. When stating significance, will stating that a resource is contributing to a local historic district sufficient?
No, you're going to have to give us more information than that. If there's no written information on the resource specifically, you still have to include a description on why this is a contributing resource in the district. So, for example, is it because of its, is it an intact building from its period and from the period of significance? Is it, why is it significant? Why is it contributing to the district? You have to explain, something to us. Just simply stating that it's contributing to the district is not sufficient. But if it's in a local historic district, there should be some information available to provide that minimum information.
Interesting question about the application. Can partially completed applications be saved? And I think we did create a function to save it as you're entering data.
Martha?
Yes.
We did not.
Oh, we did not. Okay.
The system will not allow that. So while
Okay.
we're using this particular system, nobody has any way to save anything.
So it's going to have to be once and done.
Pretty much.
All right. Now, the next question, should I upload documents or refer to county records? The property is on the state registry and the historic district in its own right. So I'm assuming it's state registered district.
So yes, you can upload those documents. I'm not sure what that means exactly, if you're uploading documents or referring to county records. Whatever pertinent records or documents you have, you can submit and upload, as long as it's, you know, applicable to the resource and you determine it would be useful for us to have. So I think the answer is yes to the question.
Okay, a lot of questions related to being in a district and what that means. So one person asked, Mark Reynolds asked, why triple certification of a property in a historic district is required. And then another person asked, if we are nationally listed, do we still enter our local district? Now you only have to choose one type. So you could be in a local district, but also National Register listed. You just choose one of those. But the other question about triple certification, I'm not sure what that person's getting at.
I mean, that might be referring to the 3-part application. I'm not sure, but that's the kind of standard, you know, like I said, it's modeled after the federal 3-part application. So it's, you know, part 1 is verifying that it's eligible as a historic resource. Part 2 is describing and approving the proposed work as compliant with the standards. And then part 3 is after the work is completed, we verify that it meets the standards and are approving it for the credit. So that's the 3-part application, if that's, you know, what your question is asking. Certification of property in historic district. So, but if you're referring to the 3 different ways to be eligible, like Martha was saying, then you can select which one. If you're both national and local, you can select which one you want to apply under. But if you're both, you know, you might as well just choose the National Register designation, because then you're not obligated to submit the declaration of location form. But either one would work.
And just to be clear, because there was an earlier question about this, our office, the State Historic Preservation Office, does not necessarily have the most up-to-date information for locally designated historic districts, which is part of the reason why we need some additional information if you are in a local historic district only with no other designation.
Next question, also from Mark Reynolds, are the local HDC staff able to get the certification done in 48 hours? I think that's a question really for you have to reach out to your local HDC and ask them about their staff capacity to get that declaration of location form signed. Brian, do you have any other?
No, I mean, yeah, just you'll have to contact them, you know, as soon as you can to see if you can facilitate getting those documents if you need them to submit with your application.
One thing I will add is that we will accept a digital signature on those forms, and they can be digital. They can be emailed. So you don't have to say walk into the office of your local government and get that signed in person. It can be done through an email with the staff member. Is there a place to upload or attach content to respond to the application question? Not on the initial application, but when we email you with your specific to receive your specific information with the box folder, that's where you would upload the information. Brian, do you have anything to add to that?
No, yeah, that's correct. The only thing you can upload with the online portal application is the declaration of location form.
For married couples owning a resource, do both names have to be on the application?
Both names do not have to be on the application, but if both are wanting to claim the credit, then you should put both names and both social security numbers. If not, you can, as long as we have one and one social security number, that will be where the that's the information that Department of Treasury will get from us, and that is the person who will be eligible to apply for the credit, claim the credit.
I'm going to disagree, because if you do that and the customer,
Mark, I think something happened with the Zoom, so maybe you could enter that in the comments.
now let me try one more time.
Okay,
I said, I think we need both of them's information and signatures because you don't want to end up getting in the middle of a marital dispute where they were going to do this project and one of them went and signed up for credits and didn't tell the other one about it. And they're going to be calling you, you know why they didn't have an opportunity to look at this. So I think that you are. I think you should require both signatures.
okay, so our State Historic Preservation Officer, Mark Rodman, we're saying that you do have to have both names on the application. You know, not wanting to get into a marital dispute, and I would imagine also if they're both planning to take the credit and are both have title on that property, that would be an issue as well. Next question, I think we answered about would it be relevant to put your contractor's name in the additional contact section, and we would not be contacting your contractor, so that's not necessary. Will we get the $50 back if you find there's no money left by the time we apply?
No, unfortunately, all the review fees are non-refundable. So if you do submit an application, you will have to submit the review fee. And if you are not awarded a credit and your application closes after 2 years, we will not be refunding any of the review fees, unfortunately.
We will be notifying people in an email or in a response when you submit your application that we have filled all of the credits for that particular year. So that should give you a hint, you know, that'll be your decision point as to whether you want to apply or wait. Does the 48 hours include non-business, i.e. evening and weekend hours, or is it generally business 8 to 5? My understanding is it's a straight 48 hours, whether it's a weekend or not. So if you hear from us on a Friday, for example, and you get that email, you're going to have to turn around even on a weekend and have that information to us within 48 hours. Let's see. Chris Fraley is asking, earlier in the commercial segment, it was clear that a project contact was required to be a certified taxpayer. Is that different for residential? No, I don't think so.
No. So I think what we were saying is that if the project contact, let me read this again. No, it's the owner who has to be the certified taxpayer. So if a project contact or someone other than the owner is submitting the application, they can sign the application and submit it. If that is the case, then the owner of the property has to state that they are a certified taxpayer and sign and upload that document with their upload to the box folder. So you do have the opportunity for the project contact to submit the application or someone other than the owner, but then the owner has to basically sign that attestation and include that as an upload to their box folder. So we do need verification and signature from the owner, even if it's not when the application is submitted.
Thank you. All right, I think we've talked about timeframes for work with the next question. If work started last year and is still continuing, what to do
and
then?
You describe the projects as they are, as they're happening. So you know, describe your completed portions that have already happened and then continue with describing the work that is yet to be done. So it's fine if it's continuing, just describe it that way.
Okay, here's a person who does not have online banking and will have to go to the bank to make the transfer. So what reference do I use to identify what my payment's for? like a memo, I suppose. I would suggest to state preservation tax credit part, whatever part of the application you're applying for. Are you scrolling back to something?
Yeah, so here's the information. So I don't know if this is, kind of the information you would need, but that's account title, strategic fund agency, credit to state of Michigan. Yeah, you might want to verify what other information you might need, but that's the basic information we have on how where the money goes.
Okay. So if your bank is saying you need to have a memo or something, that's what I would just suggest, is that it's intended for the state preservation tax credit and for whatever part of the application you're applying for it with that fee.
Type of online transfer you're looking to do is called ACH in banking circles. So that's alpha.
Right. I don't know what that stands for, but
Yeah, it stands for automated clearinghouse.
thank you. So getting back to the 1 year question, the 1 year look back question, are architectural soft costs incurred in the past year eligible, and should they be listed in the application?
Yes, they would be eligible as eligible expenditures made in the last year, and they can be included in your application. That's a good question.
Okay. Most people with their regular cell phones will have trouble getting a wide angle view of the interior, and is asking if regular ones will work. But this is somebody who has good architectural drawings in 3D.
Yeah, I mean, most of the photographs that we receive for projects that we review are, just kind of taken, normal kind of photographs. So they should work fine. You may have to, include a couple extra if you're trying to, include a larger area of where you're trying to work, but that should be fairly easy to do and key that to the plan. So I would say if you don't have the ability to do that, then just take, 1 or 2 extra to make sure you're encompassing all of the area where you're proposing to do the work.
Thank you. Okay, question particularly about the fees and breaking it down. So a part 2 with less than $20,000 in QREs is $100, and greater than 20,000 is 2%. So for a $20,000 project, is the fee $400?
I don't know.
The math looks correct, but it's
That looks correct to me.
It's $20,000 of QREs, not that the total project. Yes, correct.
So the credit amount would be 5,000, and then 2% of that.
It's fine. Okay, so that's right. It's the credit. It's a percent of the credit that you're requesting, not the project.
Correct.
So, right, as Brian indicates, so if you have 25% of this $20,000 project and you have $5,000 QRE, it's 2% of that $5,000, not 2% of the $20,000 project. I hope that's explicit. I will add that we have put together application instructions, and those will be available tomorrow as well, so that you can read through those, and there'll be further information about how to assess this fee. Somebody thanks us for putting together the webinar, so you're welcome. And they're asking, once we submit our part 2, will we be notified by SHPO of our spot in the queue? And then, can multiple people apply for a single project at once on Wednesday morning? If so, will SHPO accept the fastest submission and discard the later applications?
So the first part of your question, once we submit our part 2, will we be notified by SHPO of our spot in the queue? I do not know the answer to that. Martha or Mark, are we going to notify of the spot in the queue?
Well, they'll get an email confirming that we received their application.
Right, but that doesn't tell them where they are.
Right, that's not gonna, it's not designed to be able to tell you exactly where you are in the order of everything that's submitted. So
Right.
unfortunately, and Mark, you can add, we don't have a system that will allow us to do that electronically for you.
No, and so they're going to find out where they are in line when they end up getting their part 2 back.
So when you get your part 2 back, you'll find out
Your approved part 2.
after it's approved.
You'll have an approval number, which will tell you where you are.
Okay, thank you.
And then can multiple people apply for a single project at once on Wednesday morning? Oh, don't know the answer to that question either. Martha, do you want to chime in on that one?
Well, I'm not sure what they're asking here.
So
For a single project. Oh, I see. No, we're only going to take an application for one. Okay, I think they're trying. This sounds kind of like gaming the system a little bit by getting multiple people to submit the same application.
I think there's a vacant building and several people out there hollering.
And what? Could you repeat that, Mark?
I said there's a vacant building and several people want to redevelop it, and so they'll all submit application and see who gets the tax credits.
Okay, but what about the owner connection in that instance? I mean, the owner's got to sign off on all of these applications.
That's true. So yeah, probably the first one's the only one we'll accept.
Yeah, I think that would make sense on principle. We are saying this is a first come, first served program. So yes, the initial application that we received, because you're only allowed to submit an application for one project per property at a time. So having multiple applications for the same project on the same property would be discarded anyway.
Martha, I'm sorry, we need to go back to the question about the fees.
Okay. I think it's been removed.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So the example was for a $20,000 project. That was we answered that incorrectly. The fee would not be $400. It would be $100. So in the fee structure was set up that way. If you remember, if it's less than or equal to $20,000, the fee is $100. And then the next step up, if it's greater than or equal to $20,000, then we still wanted to continue from that $100. So the 2% of 5,000 would be $100, and then you go up from there. So the part 2 fee,
Right.
a $20,000 project with a 25% credit is $5,000 of credit. 2% of that would be the $100. And that was designed that way so that it's a kind of a continual increase, incremental increase in the fees.
Thank you. And I believe this is addressed in our FAQs, but if not, it should be, because I think people are going to get a little confused from this section. So we'll have it in there. Next question. Okay, so somebody's just trying to make sure they have this correct. So it sounds like part 2 is submitted in 2 parts. First, just the answers to the questions on the PDF on the website, which includes an estimate of costs, and secondly, a full description of work to be done, photos, etc., which will be submitted via box after we receive an email with instructions on how to do so. Yes.
That's correct.
That's correct. Yes. So you understand it. Anonymous, you do understand this. Marcia Benz asks, how do we find out property value before and after a project?
So that should be part of your annual assessment, right? So you should be able to grab that information off your tax assessment based on the value of the property.
Thank you. Somebody has a home in the Indian Village Historic District in Detroit and has received commission approval of their project. So is other research needed? No, I'm assuming that would be a certificate of appropriateness that they've received. So that could be submitted with the documents. I think we answered that question elsewhere. Where would be the best place to go to get economic data? I do know that in the instructions we're putting out, which will be available again tomorrow, we do have further details about where to get the economic data. It might be a little bit different for the homeowners versus the commercial side. So do we have any other thoughts on that?
Yes.
Okay, Mark.
For the homeowner, you're going to get all that information from your contractor. You don't get how many jobs he added to get that project done. You're going to get the local sales tax, the state sales tax, the income tax, and the local income tax. All by getting that from your contractor. That's who's going to have it. So you want to talk to them before you start the project. Make sure they know you have to have this information.
Thank you. So I just want to reflect on what Mark said. So you are going to have to work with your contractors to get the economic data. So I would suggest that you work with your contractor initially at the outset and say, this is going to be a tax credit project. I'm going to need XYZ information from you when this is done, and prepare them to provide you with that information, but it will have to come from your contractor. Mark Reynolds also asks, there's a historic district study that was done in the 1970s, early 1970s. Where do I get this? I would say any information about your historic district that you're located in, please contact your local historic district office, which is usually associated with like your planning commission and your planning office in your community. This is assuming that you're in a locally designated historic district. So
this is Nathan. I just want to jump in real quick because I was actually specifically looking up this question for the city of Detroit because I kind of vaguely remembered something about this.
okay.
In Detroit, reports were not produced for local historic districts before 1976, which includes Indian Village. So in this case, there may not be a report to refer to.
Okay, thank you. So we have about, we have a hard stop at 6:30. So we have about 10 minutes for anybody else who would like to hang on with these questions. I think this next one has been answered about determining property value after the project. Can you use a signed declaration of location form from previous tax credits from a few years ago?
No.
No.
We'll
Okay.
need an updated form, please.
Okay. Next question. Yes.
Going back to the Indian Village discussion, Indian Village is also in the National Register of Historic Places.
Right.
So, you know, if they go to that nomination, they might be able to find the information there and not have to worry about what the local standard didn't do.
That's a good point. So remember, you have 3 different criteria under which you can qualify and be eligible for the credit. So if you are in a local district and you can't find some of this information, if you are in the National Register, then use that National Register nomination, for example. And that would be a resource for you. Somebody is asking the question, does the fee stack, for example, if a request is for over 20K, is the total fee 4% of the project total? So I think we've addressed that. It's the credit total. Is the 2% for the part 2 due before a number is assigned?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
We won't review the application until the fee is paid.
If the only work you're doing at this time is the exterior, how many interior photos are necessary? So Brian, we'll be reaching out to you to tell you exactly what we need, but if you're only doing exterior work, then I think that would be the focus of your supplemental information, correct, Brian?
Well, we will still need some interior photos. So how many? I don't know. I don't know the size of your house. I don't know, the details, but you will have to submit both interior and exterior, even if you're only doing exterior work. And it's probably better to err on the side of a few more photos than a few less, because again, we have to consider your application complete in order to review it and reply to you. I know it's kind of a, I can't have a hard answer for that because I don't know your resource, but give us representative interior photographs, even if it's only exterior work.
Okay, thank you. Janet Krieger asked for the economic data. How much backup data do we need to collect? Now, we've talked about the data, and we are going to need to collect that from the contractors, but Janet's asking if it's submitted with the Part 3, or do you keep it on file for a certain period of time? We do have to report this economic data to the legislature. That is part of the law that was signed. So that's why we are collecting this. But that would be submitted with your Part 3, correct, Brian?
Correct.
Yeah. And I'm not sure how long we keep it on. We would keep your file for as long as probably the recapture period is open. We've asked the question, we answered the question about multifamily properties and multiple living situations. Janet asks again, how can we help get the caps lifted? We're going to see how far this cap goes now as of Wednesday. And as Janet indicates, we're going to be swimming with applications. How do we share with elected officials that the economic data shows the need we all have? Well, we are going to be collecting a lot of data from this program. This is a new tax credit program. A lot of new information is being generated. But certainly you all have the ability to reach out to your legislators and local government to let people know about your concerns with this. Another question from Janet, how will cottages be viewed under the program? Family cottages, it's appealing to know the credits can be distributed to co-owners, but how will they compete?
They will be, considered and reviewed just like any other, owner-occupied resource. So, yeah, from our perspective, we wouldn't distinguish between the two as long as it's, as long as they're the owner of the property. Again, they could have multiple properties, so they would be just as competitive, and as long as they meet all the criteria, they would fall in line and receive their pre-approval or priority number, just like any other project. And we had quite a few like in that situation in the previous program, Janet, especially, like places like the Bayview Association, which is a, beautiful place, and summer cottages there. So we reviewed and approved a number of projects for Bayview, for example.
Well, here's a tricky question. So we've answered the multifamily question, I think, pretty well, but somebody is interested in replacing a roof on an owner-occupied multifamily home. How would that be split when both the owner-occupied and non-owner units share the same roof? I think we would probably have to know about that individual property in question. And I don't know if we'd look at the QREs as a percentage of you wouldn't be able to take the credit for the entire roof job, but maybe a portion of it. Would that be the case? Any thoughts on that? Maybe we need to think that through a little more. Let's see. Okay. Somebody's asking, all applications are simply first come, first served if they meet all the appropriate criteria. The added value or historic significance has no bearing as long as it meets the minimum criteria. That is true. If you submit an application that meets all the criteria, it's submitted appropriately, we are not weighing these based on the historic significance of the resource. Let's see, scrolling up a bit. Okay, again, a lot of questions about the split between commercial, residential, multifamily homes. Again, I think we've answered that to the best of our ability. Okay. Somebody asked a question they said hasn't been answered. The form requested a start and end date. What if work started last year and is still continuing? I do think we have addressed that question. You can go back up to precisely 1 year before the date of your application. And that would have to be your start date. Even if you were doing work before that, you wouldn't qualify for work that was prior to 1 year. Correct, Brian?
Correct. Correct.
Okay, let's see. I don't know that we talked about couples taking the credit, and then somebody's asking a question about divorce. I don't know that we have an answer to that question. That might be something that would actually have to be dealt with as part of your divorce settlement or your post-divorce order as to who's going to get the credit in deciding that. I don't think that's something that we can really address here with this program. Somebody's asking for the phone number that should be on your screen. In terms of somebody asking about opening a box file for another MEDC use, it was very complicated. Are we going to have instructions for using box? I don't believe we have any instructions related to the use of box for this, except Brian will be providing applicants with a link to their box folder as soon as that preliminary application is submitted and initially reviewed.
Correct.
Okay. We have 2 minutes left. I'm trying to see what else we haven't answered yet. Brian, I don't know if you see anything else that hasn't been answered yet.
So like if renovating 4 bathrooms is one project or 4, it's often more straightforward and simpler for us to review a project if you almost take it room by room. So you can have common things happening in multiple rooms, but if like with 4 bathrooms, it's usually easier for us and to coordinate the photographs and the work descriptions if you take each one and describe it as a separate project. Even if the work is very similar, even if it's coordinating the photographs, looking at the work description, looking at the project, it's better if you kind of treat each one as a separate project. That would be preferable for us.
Okay. Another question, this person wants to clarify, are eligible QREs repairs that have started or completed within a year of the application date?
Well, it could be either.
Okay.
As long as it's within that year.
Right.
Yeah.
The
cost has to be incurred or paid within that year.
Thank you. And the link posted for the 4 nomination materials is not working. I'm not sure what that is referring to.
It's for Indian Village. There were some questions about the National Register stuff for Indian Village, and I put it in. I responded to someone with the link to the National Archives version of the National Register nomination. And sometimes, I mean, that's not our website. It's external from the state of Michigan. So I would say try to just save that link, open a new browser window, try it again. You can also email preservation@michigan.gov and we can email you a copy of it as well. So but you're not the first person to have a problem with the National Archives website.
So I want to thank everybody for joining us. We have come to the end of our time for this webinar. I hope we have answered most, if not all, of your questions. We will be updating our frequently asked questions bulletin and posting specific instructions for the application tomorrow on our website. So please check back with us then. And again, application open at 9 a.m. On Wednesday, June 15th. It goes live. So we thank you very much for joining us. please reach out to us at the contacts that you see here on your screen if you have any additional questions or we could be of additional assistance. So thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.